So welcome to Healthy Together Time. My name is Stephanie Whiting, and I have been an Optavia coach since 2016. And I am so happy to be here with you guys. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. Okay, here we are at the end of the 90-day challenge, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about lessons we learned in Cancun. So we've got a couple of shares for you tonight. We're excited. But first, let's talk about the four components of our system. If you're new here, we want to give you a overview of what Optavia is. It's like four legs of a chair. And if you don't utilize all four legs, you get a chair that's not very stable. So in Optavia, everybody gets a coach or an accountability buddy. Coaches are working on themselves too, always. And, we find that our habits of health transformational system is key because our body will typically match up to where your mind is set, right? So this is why we're here doing the mindset work. So congratulations for being here. And then we get the Optavia community. So if you're here right now, you're participating in our community. You're not alone in your pursuit of health, and your chances of success increase way, way, way higher when you plug in. So we've got also the number 4, and my favorite are the scientifically designed fuelings, which balance blood sugar, reduce cravings, reduce decision fatigue. That's a big one for me, and simplify the process of creating new habits. We specialize in high nutrition and muscle protection with nothing artificial. So tonight we are going to have 2 mini presentations of some things that we covered in Cancun. So we're so happy you're here. And I'm excited for you guys to hear about some of the things that we discussed while we were there. Nothing can duplicate actually being there though. So give yourself woo, hands in the air. Give yourself a round of applause if you made it to Cancun. That was such an awesome ending. Yes, that was such an awesome ending to our trip. And so I wanted to put all your beautiful faces on here so you can congratulate yourself to be the most amazing people that just showed up. And it was just so fun to be there with everyone. So tonight, our first presentation is going to be something that I talked about in Cancun, and that's called quiet quitting. And so I wanted to talk about, what might have happened in the last 90 days to you. So we all set those goals, right? I think it was August. And what happened is that sometimes our primitive brains kind of take over. And our primitive brain is like an unreasonable toddler who thinks they know what they want. You guys ever had like a 2-year-old and they think they know what they want, and it's never exactly what they should have. Like sometimes it's soap, they want to eat like dishwasher detergent. And a lot of times the things that kids want are not in their best interest. And so I put this up here because there's this website that is so funny, you guys. I'll link it later, but this is just like a kid. Okay, they want ravioli for dinner. You make ravioli for dinner. They don't want ravioli for dinner. It's just kind of like that unreasonable thing that if you've ever raised a little kid, that you understand that they don't really know what they want. And I like to think of the primitive brain as like a 2-year-old that doesn't really know what they want. So let's talk for a minute about what your primitive brain is motivated to do. Okay, it's very, very unfortunate. Your primitive brain is motivated to conserve energy, AKA lay on the couch, avoid pain, social pain, mental pain, physical pain, any kind of a pain. It wants to avoid that and seek pleasure. Okay, so if you're trying to create something outside your life, that's outside your comfort zone, you're going to be working against that primitive brain every hour of every day. And, there's this really cool idea that I heard about, and it's called quiet quitting. And the reason I wanted to talk about it, because it's so easy to identify that self-sabotaging behavior in little kids, right? But what's the adult version of this? Like if you didn't make it to your goals, if you wrote out, your 90-day show up challenge and you didn't get every single thing that was on there, why didn't you get it? This is what we're going to talk about today. And I hope that this helps you guys, because when I heard about this, it just rang so true for me. And I love to train on things that hit home for me, something I need to work on. So what is quiet quitting? So quiet quitting is like quitting behind your own back. There's this person like trying to hide behind the plant as they like leave their job, this kind of came about during COVID, this whole idea, but I'm going to kind of take I'm going to take quiet quitting to a different place. And we're going to talk about it in relation to your goals. So if you ever set a goal or dreamed a dream that you quit on, but you don't really know when you quit, this is what we're going to talk about. Like, when did I stop working out? When did I stop eating well? Like I said, I was going to do this thing and then I stopped doing it. When did I stop going to yoga? Like, when did that happen? And it was actually done so quietly that you didn't even notice, right? You did it behind your own back. It's like quitting behind your own back. So if you guys can get an idea of anytime this has happened to you in your life, like I want you to think about that right now. How did this happen to me? And I love this. So here's the first tip. You don't want to leave that primitive brain, like think of that toddler brain, okay? You don't want to leave a 2-year-old unsupervised in your house. Sorry, let's go back. You never want to leave a 2-year-old unsupervised in your house because that primitive brain will use your own words to convince you that it is your actual brain. And here's what I mean by that. You guys ever weaponized stop, challenge, choose? Like I use stop, challenge, choose all weekend. I had a client tell me this the other day. I chose Reese's on Friday. I chose donuts on Saturday and I chose pancakes on Sunday. Like, I was so mindful of being off plan. You see what I'm saying? Like, you guys get it? Like you're just mindfully making decisions to undermine yourself. It's like your prefrontal cortex got hijacked by that 2-year-old brain, right? It thinks it still lives in a cave. So luckily we have a parent. A parent is like our prefrontal cortex. That's our higher level brain. And that higher level brain can actually manage our primitive brain. It's something that we can do, but we have to keep it engaged. Okay, so how do we keep that prefrontal cortex engaged? These are things that I like to do. Everybody's different. So I'm going to give you guys some of my top favorite things. If I find my goals have been going south, I'm probably not listening to podcasts very often. I'm probably not in a self-development book. What's going on with my morning? Am I just rolling out of bed and going straight to like social media? Have I been talking to my coach? Man, that was something I got called out on this weekend. And am I in my weekly meetings? And for some people, it takes an immersive experience. For some people, you got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to get somewhere like Mexico to get out and really re-engage that prefrontal cortex. It's like figuring out what it is you really want in life. Sometimes you have to do extreme things to figure it out. So that's why we host these yearly retreats. We do it at a lot of our expense. We want to get you there so we can change. So I want to talk about 2 kinds of quiet quitting. And really, there's 2 kinds of quitting, period. But one is conscious quitting, and the other one is unconscious quitting. So conscious quitting is like what we're looking for, okay? You will know you made a conscious choice because you do this thing out loud. So quiet quitting is kind of like you just fade off. You don't tell anyone, you don't make a different choice, you just kind of fade out. But when you quit something consciously, you decide to do something else instead. And this is what I mean. Like if you're doing a 5-in-1, but then you for some reason decide to train for a marathon, or you're hitting the gym for 2 hours a day because you didn't tell your coach, but you want to build like 20 pounds of muscle and you didn't talk to anybody about it. And you're like, man, I can't really do this 5-in-1. I'm dying. So what this would look like in making a conscious decision would be deciding to do a 4-in-2, right? Deciding to do a different plan. You're not giving up and turning away from the intent, the desire, the goal. You're just changing the approach. This would be like if you wanted to make an extra $50,000 and you got a job at Domino's Pizza and you're like, this actually is the worst. I can't do this. But you decide, I'm not going to get a job at Domino's Pizza. I'm going to get a job here instead. I still want to make that money, right? I would suggest becoming a health coach. It's an awesome way to make extra money, but it's shifting from one thing to the next, okay? So preparing for the obstacle that's coming is a huge way to avoid quiet quitting. You decide ahead of time what your plan is going to be. So what happens in the past when we quit quietly is usually something came up right? Some vacation came up, we got off plan, some, whatever it is, something came up and we didn't anticipate it. And so I love using the idea of the warped wall, because you guys, has anybody seen American Ninja Warrior? Like, I love American Ninja Warrior. Okay. Nobody goes on that show and they're like, what's this wall at the end? I never knew this was coming. Like, I wish they would have told me. Like, people have built these in their backyard, right? And they're running up and down them in their backyard to prepare for the obstacle that they know is coming on the TV show. Okay. And so people actually build the mini version of the wall. And we practice by, you don't get to that. You don't get up that wall right off the bat. You have to practice and practice and practice. And you work up to bigger challenges. You're kind of like, oh, hi, there's that thing I've been wanting to do. There's that obstacle. I have a plan for you. Do you see the difference? Let's think about the warped wall in terms of Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, holidays. Maybe you're a health coach already and you're like, oh man, I didn't know my kids were coming home for the summer. How am I going to deal with this obstacle? But the thing is, you do. If you forecast, if you sit down with your coach, you're using the tools you have to forecast. So it's like creating that plan in advance. Okay. I love this. I love having a plan. So I want to talk about 3 ways to avoid quiet quitting, because to me, this is it. If we can, let me pull this out. If we can keep that prefrontal cortex engaged, this is like keeping our parents close by. You guys ever have kids that went to college and they're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And they didn't need your help at all. And all of a sudden they're phoning home and they're like, how do I make a doctor's appointment, Mom? How do I pay this bill? Like, my car's making this weird sound. What do I do? So it's like keeping your parents close by. They're like on speed dial, right? So you're keeping that prefrontal cortex engaged. Remember what we talked about earlier, the going to events, being in your meetings. You guys, this is people are practicing. It doesn't come natural. Jared didn't become a professional volleyballer, overnight. He works out in the gym. He practices jumping. I've seen if you guys follow Jared on social media, you'll see he practices jumping up and down on boxes all the time. And he swings heavy stuff to practice for going out to the game, because you don't just show up on game day and think that everything's going to work out, right? But yet, how often do we fail in our health goals because we're afraid of the practice, or we don't think we have to practice? So this is just keeping that prefrontal cortex turned on. Okay. Volleyball things. I love it. Making shift moves. Okay. Making shift moves is huge. You guys, if you think of nothing else from this presentation, how do I avoid quiet quitting? I'm going to do it out loud and I'm going to make a shift move if I don't want to follow my original goal or intention. Okay. So if you decide that you set this goal and it was too aggressive, maybe you say you want to lose 20 pounds in a month, and at the end, you're coming up on the end of the month and you're like, man, I've only lost 12 pounds, but that's pretty great. Talk to your coach and say, you know what? I want to set a new goal, but I still want to get to my original full weight loss goal. It might just take me 7 months to get there instead of 5. Is that okay? I want to shift my approach. I want to start working out a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of protein in. Might slow me down, but it's okay. That's a shift move. Okay. So this is something that we can practice with our coaches. And then pre-engineering those obstacles. This is such a big one. And you guys, we see them coming. We know they're going to come. It happens every single year. So just think of the warped wall and think I'm not going to get surprised by the stuff I know is up ahead. I'm going to pre-engineer those obstacles. This is much like being on plan and knowing the holidays are coming and being okay, I see each holiday and I'm going to sit down with my coach and I'm going to come up with a plan that is great. And it might be that your plan is to not be on plan during that entire day of the holiday. It might be that you take one meal off. It might be, hopefully it's not that you take the entire holidays off, right? Because then we just get back to square one. But sitting down and coming up with a plan for those is like practicing your warped wall in the backyard. Nobody gets it the first time. And people are stoked when they get it at all, but how good does it feel when you make that, you pre-engineer that obstacle and you make it through the holidays and you're like, oh my gosh, look at this. The first year I didn't gain 10 pounds over Christmas. That feels so good. That feels so empowering. So speaking of holidays and family, I've asked my amazing friend, Lori Warren, to come in and talk to us a little bit about family and drama, because I think this ties in so beautifully to heading into the holidays and also having a goal. So Lori, will you talk to us a little bit about family and the drama triangle?
Oh, I'm so excited to be here, Steph, and I've just enjoyed so much learning from you about quiet quitting. I had a lot of realizations and realized that I have done that so many times without even realizing it. And one of the things that I'm realizing can be an instigator of quiet quitting can actually be part of the reason why we started working on our health goals in the first place, and that is our families. So I want to talk for a minute about families and the drama triangle. So put a 5 in the chat if family is part of the reason that you started to work on your health goals and part of your why for getting healthy. I'm seeing lots of 5s pop in. Yes. So many of us started, we wanted to have the energy to run and play with our kids or our grandkids. We want to travel with our spouse. We want to maybe, like for me, be able to take care of our elderly parents and have the energy and the health to be able to do that. And so our love for our family and our desire to be with them and to help them can actually propel us forward in our health goals. But sometimes along the way, they can actually start to be the reason that we find ourselves quiet quitting and in the drama triangle. So Dr. A teaches us about the drama triangle in our life book and the Habits of Health book. So let's meet the players of the drama triangle right here. Just like in any good drama, we have a victim, a villain, and a hero. And you can identify yourself as the victim when you hear yourself saying things like, oh, this feels so hard now, or I have, or there's nothing I can do about that, or I have to do that. You can identify yourself as the villain if you hear yourself saying things like, oh, this should be different. Who's to blame here? I'm going to find someone who messed up and it's not me for sure. You're wrong. You find yourself blaming others or maybe even blaming yourself, like, oh, I can't believe I ate the donut. I'm such a loser. You can recognize yourself as the hero if you hear yourself saying things like, oh, don't worry about it. I can handle it. I've got this. Oh, poor you. I can do this for you. Don't worry about it. When you find yourself seeking temporary relief or kind of band-aiding situations, that can be a hero too. So becoming aware of where you are in the drama triangle, whether it's within your family unit or within your own self, within your own brain, is the first step. But luckily, guess what? We don't have to stay there. We can choose to close the curtains on our drama more often by stepping into the empowerment triangle. So let's learn a little bit about the empowerment triangle. In the empowerment triangle, the victim becomes the creator, and they see themselves as powerful instead of powerless, and focus on possibilities instead of saying, oh, that could never happen. And we begin to see that there are multiple options available. Like you go to a party where they're serving cheesecake and you think, well, the only option was I had to eat it. But you start realizing, there's lots of different ways that I could handle that. I could just choose to bring a fueling and eat that instead, or just say, I'm focusing on my health right now and I'm going to choose not to have the cheesecake. The villain can step into the role of the challenger and shift to face what's no longer serving you. instead of being defensive about your behavior. And to begin to accept and to commit and learn from an event that happened, and just be curious. Well, that happened. I wonder what I could learn from that situation. And provide pressure, loving pressure to create change instead of getting angry about how the thing should have never happened in the first place, right? And then the last is the hero. The hero can step into the role of the coach, and the role of the coach, you begin to facilitate self-empowerment instead of stepping in to rescue others or yourself. This could look like you feeling that you have to eat the ice cream with your hubby because he would feel lonely if you didn't eat it with him, right? Or you could reward yourself for being good all week, so you deserve some chocolate cake. So beginning to challenge that, and you begin to ask yourself and others questions and listen deeply instead of rushing in to solve the problem for everyone. And you begin to appreciate the value of pain and suffering, knowing that those feelings are okay and that they're there to teach you some wisdom that you will need to learn and grow through the process that's going to serve you actually in the end. So this process of shifting from the drama triangle, like Steph talked about shift moves, these are shift moves, moving from the drama triangle to the empowerment triangle. And just like anything, it takes practice. The more you do it, the more quickly you begin to identify when you're drifting back into the drama triangle, and then you can choose to move back into the empowerment triangle and take 100% responsibility for yourself and allow others to do the same. So in closing, I just want to encourage you to not allow your why to become your excuse, and to step out of the drama triangle and become empowered to be the dominant force of your life.
That was totally awesome. Thank you so much, Lori. Isn't that helpful? Like, you guys, all the stories, right? There's so many stories around family and the holidays. And so I just thought that was such an important topic to talk about moving into Thanksgiving and Christmas, and realizing that the power is in us to change. Like, we don't have to wait around for other people to change. It's such an old story that can play over and over again in our brains. And so it's fun because I've heard Lori train on something similar to this, and I've heard this topic before, but every time I hear it, it's new to me. I'm like, oh, yes, we can get in the empowerment triangle in our own families. So I love that so much. Thank you so much. And then now we're going to hear from Heather Humphreys, and she has an amazing story. You guys, Heather is one of my favorite people in the world. And guess what? We as coaches are real people. And I just love that she is sharing her real story. And so you see that as a coach, you're always working on yourself. And she's going to talk about leading with her own health tonight.
Thank you, Steph. Well, I'm honored to be on here and share a little bit about my story. And you're right, like, just because we're health coaches doesn't mean we're perfect, doesn't mean we're nailing it all the time. I mean, I began my health journey over 5 years ago. And one thing that I have learned over the last several years is that self-leadership is about constantly developing that inner game, right? That mindset. And then the outer game, which is the actions. What are the actions that we're taking? So that inner game really consists of intention, right? Self-awareness, self-confidence, and that self-efficacy, that self-belief to really achieve that personal mastery, while that outer game is really just consisting of influence and impact. And I think we naturally want to resist things that are uncomfortable, right? But once we choose to lead ourselves through that discomfort, we begin to see things differently because we're showing up differently. And so that resistance turns into like maybe excitement or determination or motivation. So, you know, the funny thing with leading ourselves first is that we will start to see that it creates this ripple effect that we just start leading in all different areas of our life. So my health, for example, has been a really big one for me, you guys. Ever since, gosh, going back to high school, I took this class in high school, weight training class. And ever since, I was just super passionate about lifting. And I've been a gym rat for decades. So I was really struggling with bringing exercise back into my life over the last few years. And you know what? I love to place blame on why that was happening. We just talked about the drama triangle, right? Like I would blame it on COVID. Like COVID was just brutal over those last few years. Can't get my mindset right. Like this has just totally destroyed my motivation. We were moving to a new state. Gosh, that's totally thrown me out of whack. I have all this stress. I mean, you guys, you name it. I was placing blame everywhere. It just seemed easier to place blame than just take responsibility for myself and my own actions. But I got to a point that I was just fed up with being the victim, right? I was tired of being in that mode, and I was tired of making excuses. And like Steph said, quietly quitting on myself. So I made a decision, and it all started with that show up challenge. And 90 days ago, I said to myself, I'm going to recommit to myself. I'm going to go all in. So I was like, all right, I'm going to officially declare that I'm going to show up in my nutrition. I'm going to hop back on the 5 and 1, as well as incorporate 5 days of exercise into my daily routine. You guys, it was rough. Okay. It's rough in the beginning. And I think it is with anything when we're changing our habits and trying to create that structure. But you guys, 15 weeks later, I've lost 12 pounds. I've stayed consistent with working out 5 days a week, even through all the traveling. I've had 6 trips in the last 90 days. And you guys, I was able to stay on track with my nutrition and my workouts through all of that. Now, none of it was perfect, okay? But my point is I showed up every single day. And that commitment, it is stuck. And I feel awesome about that, right? Like it feels good to be able to like check that box of like, this is something that's been really hard. And it's not just the physical part of it, right? But it's the mental and the emotional component. I feel like it's all in sync. It's like my entire well-being now. I'm just feeling like I'm in balance. So not getting a workout in, not an option, right? This is my new mindset. Eating like crap, it's not an option. And when you begin to lead yourself, you can then start to lead other people, believe it or not. This is how leaders are born, you guys. It's a natural progression, and it starts with you. And you want to know what else happened as a result of me showing up over the last 90 days? You guys, my husband, he is focusing on his nutrition. He's working out every day. My example is inspiring him to step back and evaluate his own habits and really dig into what he wants to create in his own health and well-being, as well as my daughter. She's already an athlete. She's in really good shape, but she has quietly gotten on the bandwagon, which I love because teenagers never want to be told what to do. So she is dialing in her nutrition. She's getting in extra workouts to really enhance her abilities as a player. So what I've learned is that when we lead with our health, everything else starts to shift and really align. The way that I show up in my marriage as a mama and in my business has really shifted, you guys. You heard Steph talking about shifting. It's all about making those shift moves. Because of the commitments that I make every day to my health, I'm also making those consistent commitments in other areas of my life. And it totally pays off. It's like things just become effortless, right? To show up in these other areas. So when you build that consistency with yourself in your own health, you're going to start to see how it begins to show up in all these other areas. And I am a true believer that how we do one thing, we do all things. So if you're not happy with the way things are in your life or your marriage or your business, your relationships, then I just invite you, do that self-scan of where you are in your mental, your physical, your emotional well-being, and maybe consider that this is your season to reset yourself. You guys, self-leadership is all about constantly developing the inner game, like I said earlier. So remember that. It's that mindset and the action that follows. So thank you so much, Steph.
Oh my gosh, you guys, put a 1 in the chat if you found that helpful or you related to Heather's story, because we all get on our game and then we get off, right? Everybody, every single person in the chat's blowing up right now because that is so hard and we judge ourselves against our best self, right? And it's like, how do we get back there? That's what Healthy Together Time is all about, you guys. That's why you're here. So just congratulations for being here tonight, because you're doing the things you need to do to get that prefrontal cortex re-engaged, to get where you want to be in life. And thank you so much for just sharing your stories with us and sharing your hearts. I appreciate you, Heather and Lori, and thank you, Jared. And speaking of Jared, let's talk. Well, first of all, I'm going to introduce next Wednesday, we are going to have an awesome webinar by Kat and John Fuller. It's going to be on habits and holidays. So you guys will want to be tuned in for that. And I wanted to let you know that if you stay here, you're going to hear from Jared Smithson. We're going to talk a little bit about, well, we'll talk a lot about exploring coaching. and how you can be 500% more likely to reach and maintain a healthy weight in the long term. You guys, a lot of the lessons that Lori and Heather and I learned, we learned through teaching others. And, just holding up a mirror for people is so powerful because you learn through their stories. So just reaching out to your community and bring others along with you on this journey of health. It doesn't end at the end of your weight loss journey. It's all about becoming better and better and better. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. And please stick around to explore health coaching.